While we switch our electronics around, our second presenter this morning is Dr. Stephanie Zaza, returning to the stage at the TEDMED at CDC. She is the director of the Epidemiology and Analysis Program Office, and today she will be presenting on the topic, Can We Make Science Sing?
Thank you, John. I just think it's really hard to write a talk when they tell you to talk about whatever you want. I was struggling with this a couple of weeks ago, and my husband and I just happened to be traveling and on a little vacation, and I picked up a Vanity Fair magazine to read on the plane, and I found this guidance on how to write a TED Talk in Vanity Fair. So I thought, wow, I need this. So I read through it, and I thought it was actually really helpful, and it spurred some creativity. So I thought I'd use this little article as a little infographic to give you an overview of my talk today. So this is step one. I'll give you a second to read it here. Yeah, so although my area of expertise isn't quite as colorful as the example on the slide, I'm proud to say that I'm a CDC techno-administrator. And my counterintuitive premise, not to argue with Judy in the least, is that I believe that public health and clinical medicine are already integrated. I will actually illustrate my talk with a rowboat. I think you'll enjoy it. And I think in step 4 here, I'm pretty sure the speakers that we heard from the TEDMED Live have pretty well used big data, so I'm not going to be joining them in that today. I think Judy and I actually are going to be introducing the idea of sweet spot, and I'm going to try to introduce 2 new terms into the public health lexicon. And I hope to hear these terms being used a lot over the next year, so we'll see if that works. The 2 terms I'm going to be using a lot are fugue and contrapuntal harmony. So we'll see if we can get those to be part of the public health work. And I'm going to use my personal god of high culture to bring that point home, Beethoven. Now, in step 6, this is hilarious. I'm supposed to humble brag, but I decided to skip this step because I went to Youngstown State University. I mean, go Penguins. And of course, I had to modify step 7 on the use of specious statistics because we all know that 100% of CDC statistics are non-specious. But for step 8, I will definitely have an exclamation point to sum it all up. And I'm going to save step 9 to share with you at the end. So as John mentioned, last year I was very fortunate to also present at this conference, and I gave a talk about epi-info, and I used Beethoven's 7th Symphony as a way to illustrate how we build a case during an outbreak investigation. And I selected this piece, in particular the opening passages of the second movement, because like an outbreak investigation, that passage builds in volume and intensity as it goes on. I want to return to that same piece of music this year, but for a slightly different reason. I think some of you know that I've played the violin for years, and I've been fortunate to get to play Beethoven's 7th a couple of times. And this particular passage from the second movement is one of my favorite passages in all of music because it's simultaneously quite simple, and at the same time, it's incredibly complex. And when it all works and it comes together, it's truly sublime. So these are the opening lines, and I've pulled out just a couple of lines, the second violin section and the violas. And what you can see here is that the second violins aren't playing, actually. Those blank lines represent that. But the violas are starting with this melody, and it's a very simple melody. It's quite rhythmic, and it's only a few notes. What happens is as the violas finish that first melody or first theme right here, now the second violins pick it up, and they play the exact same first theme. And at the same time, the violas now switch and begin playing a different melody. We'll call it theme 2. And those of you who read music or can sort of read code, it's a slightly more lyrical passage with a little bit more movement. So you have these 2 things going on simultaneously. You have this sort of theme one, a little rhythmic and quiet, and this more lyrical passage here. And then things start to get really exciting. This is where, so now the violas are finishing up theme 2, the second violins are finishing up theme 1, and now guess who comes in? The first violins come in with theme 1, the second violins move to theme 2, and the violas start a whole new musical idea. This is what is known in music as a fugue, and it creates a contrapuntal harmony, something called point and counterpoint, that are being played together and creating a whole new musical idea that's even lovelier than either of the individual ideas by themselves. If we take our plain language requirements seriously here at CDC, a fugue is also known as a round. And of course, the most famous round in music is one that many of us learned in early childhood. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. I lied, I did sing a little bit. So to make sure that you all really get this idea of point, counterpoint, we are now going to try it. So, first, everybody practice with me. Let's sing it through once. Those of you who are on Envision, feel free to sing at home. Ready? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Great. Now that was not a round. That was just everybody singing together. So we're going to break up the room into 4 groups, and we're going to sing round. So I want the back of the room, so the folks who are in the seats without the desks on your right, the folks are going to be group 1. The group at the back of the room on your left are group 2. Group 3 will be at the desks on your left, and group 4 will be at the front of the room on your right. We're going to sing the song through twice, and we'll do, and just divide, those of you who are kind of in the middle, you pick. Okay, I see people back there going, oh my gosh, what side am I on? It's okay, it's okay. And what we're going to do is each group will sing in turn, group 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we'll sing the whole song through twice. And each group comes in when the previous group finishes the first line, row, row, row your boat, then the next group comes in. So I'll conduct, and I'll make sure I cue you in, sing it through twice, and you'll see the idea of point, counterpoint. All right, are you ready? Got it? All right, sing with gusto, no fear, because I'm shaking enough for all of us. Okay, ready? Group 1. Row, row, row your boat. 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 Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. That was great. Give yourselves a hand. You did. Thank you. That was terrific. So, was it fun? It was a little ridiculous, but I hope that for some of you, you were not only singing, but also doing probably the most important thing you can do during a fugue or during a round, and that is listening very carefully to what's going on in the other groups and listening to the other melodies. This is one of the most important things that we do when we sing around, because each of those melodies has to stay in line and in the right time in order for it to work harmonically. And it requires a sort of auditory multitasking. Well, what does this have to do with us here at CDC? I think we've just shown that scientists can sing, but my question is, can we make the science sing? The art of the fugue offers us some interesting ways to think about our work, especially when we're trying to integrate various pieces of different work streams into a unified whole. Can we perform in a totally expert way and still listen to everything else that's going on around us and make the science sing? So let's start with an example of how we are already doing this at CDC. CDC's Winnable Battles, Million Hearts, and other priority initiatives are greatly facilitated in terms of their health communications messaging by CDC Vital Signs. Vital Signs itself is a priority for our director because of its reach and visibility. Vital Signs is a very complex product in the service of CDC science. Each issue involves hundreds of steps and hundreds of people, all with the same goal of making a small number of high-priority topics very visible, understandable, and actionable. In other words, to make the science sing. So let's look a little bit at some of the issues surrounding integration within vital signs. The most crucial integration happens within the subject matter program itself, where the science, policy, and communications aspects all have to come together and be aligned in order for the topic to work. Within my own office, I see firsthand how integration between vital signs and MMWR occurs. Both programs have had to modulate their tempo and pitch in order to accommodate each other and still meet their common mission. Vital Signs has also had to align the health marketing experts within OADC in order to develop multiple plain language products on extremely short deadlines. And also with the CDC Director's Office to assure Dr. Frieden's participation in the monthly telebriefing, and also to disseminate a dedicated CDC-wide announcement. OSTILTS has very neatly aligned itself into the vital signs cycle with the monthly town hall session or telebriefing with the state health officers. And of course, any of you who've actually worked on a vital signs issue in the last 3 years know that the layer upon layers of clearance has had to be aligned in order to make the thing work at all. It probably feels to those of you who've done it like endless rounds of row, row, row your boat, like you're never going to get anywhere. But the point here is that each of these individual streams has its own critical area of expertise. It is the proper alignment of those pieces with everyone listening to every other part that results in a harmonious product and generates millions of exposures to this information every single month. This kind of internal integration happens all the time at CDC. Just in my own career, I've been fortunate to participate in a number of integration, what I would call interesting experiments in integration, as an EIS officer in the hospital infections program, where epi and lab come together to solve outbreaks. As a young scientist learning the art of collaboration in order to conduct systematic literature reviews and help launch the community guide. In my first programmatic experience, where we were integrating different chronic disease programs to create Steps to a Healthier US. And as a strategy lead in OPHPR, where we were really working hard to align a preparedness and response sort of ethic and set of values with our own core public health values and functions. These examples are everywhere, and we strive for this continuously at CDC. But I have a new fascination with the idea of integration. How do we, a public health agency and community, individual professionals, how do we drive integration of our fundamental purpose with a discipline, industry, and community that has a different fundamental purpose? I am, of course, talking about the current movement toward the integration of public health and clinical medicine. This is, of course, already happening and has been happening for a very long time. Just last month, the vital signs issue on healthcare-associated infections went completely viral. For this vital signs, a special WebMD e-blast was sent to almost 20,000 hospital administrators, critical care doctors, and pathologists. But it was also distributed as usual to our state health officers. And right here in Georgia, Dr. Brenda Fitzgerald, our state health officer, sent that vital signs to every clinician licensed in the state of Georgia. One of the physicians who received it was Dr. Ken Leeper, who then immediately forwarded it to his wife, Dr. Denise Cardo, the very CDC scientist whose division scientists led the development of that issue. I just love this story because it illustrates the wonderful ongoing connection between public health and clinical medicine that has always been part of CDC's story. It also illustrates the perfect feedback loop that sometimes occurs, so we get to experience that integration firsthand. Most subscribers to MMWR are clinicians in various practice settings. CDC clinical practice guidelines are widely used in fields as disparate as STD treatment and field triage for injuries. Epi-aids frequently occur in clinical practice settings. During the 2009 flu pandemic, I watched in awe as piles and mountains of epi data were being rapidly transformed into clear guidance for clinicians. These are the people most at risk. Be vigilant with these folks. Have a low threshold for aggressive treatment or hospitalization of these populations. They're at risk of very serious illness. This immediate translation of population health data into clear guidance for clinicians and individual patients. Public health and clinical medicine are already integrated. Is it perfect? No. How do we deal with financing issues? With getting a seat at the table when important decisions are made? With simply getting access to clinical data to improve our understanding of population health issues? Do we fully understand how population-based prevention efforts contribute to overall outcomes, health outcomes, and healthcare costs? Do we experience that clinicians truly understand our advice and guidance, much less follow it? Do they even know where to find it? How are clinical registries and public health registries related or different? Can they speak to each other? What are the workforce issues, the informatics issues, the data issues? How are clinical labs and lab systems integrated with public health labs and lab systems? The list of questions goes on and on. And of course, every one of these questions deserves to have its own TED Talk, much less all the discussion and dialogue that needs to go on to solve them. And it's not my intention today to deliver a speech about the specifics of this integration. My point is, we are experts in public health, and we perform our part really well. And the counterpoint is, our colleagues in clinical medicine are experts and perform their part really well. The remaining question for me is one really of our mindset when we approach this work. Can we bring these two individual voices into alignment in such a way that they create a contrapuntal harmony? Two individually beautiful melodies that combine into something even greater. I think the answer is yes, and that there are things we can all do as individuals, as an agency, and as a public health community. The first thing that we can do is to listen to the individual voices. Just like in the Fugue, we're singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat, we're playing our melody and we're playing it well. But are we playing so loudly that we can't even hear the other voices? Are we listening for the voices of patients, providers, payers, and others who are playing different melodies? Second, can we listen for the overarching theme that occurs when we bring these various voices together? Can we stop talking about public health and clinical medicine, or worse, public health versus clinical medicine, and just start talking about health? How do the individual voices contribute to health in a consonant way, not a dissonant way? Third, can we adjust our tempo and pitch to seek harmony? Are there things we can speed up or slow down to match the tempo of the other voices? Are there things we can do to adjust our intonation, what we say and do and recommend, that will be more resonant with the other voices? Fourth, we should celebrate those moments when we hit the sweet spot. They aren't all that rare. We can use those moments to analyze and identify our collective strengths that made them happen, and then use those strengths to solve new problems and meet new challenges. Celebrate examples like vital signs. Celebrate how we learned from and leveraged the success of smallpox eradication, and now find ourselves on the verge of eliminating polio. Both of those efforts truly requiring the integration of public health and clinical medicine. And finally, we should acknowledge that this is really hard. When we sing rounds or perform fugues, we need to monitor and tune and adjust constantly. And there are a couple of threats to fugues that I think are common threats to integration. One threat is that the longer and more complicated the individual voices, the more likely the fugue will degrade as those individual voices tire. So there's discipline and concentration are really key, but maintaining alignment also requires a constant infusion of new energy. We have to be aware of that threat, and we have to make sure we take care of ourselves and our ability to keep infusing new energy into our work. Another threat, an interesting one, is that new voices inevitably seek to add themselves to any worthwhile integration effort, sort of like the first violins in the Beethoven. So, for example, here at CDC, we've had to adapt the structure, content, and directional nature, now a bi-directional nature, of our healthcare messaging in order to accommodate the new voice of social media. And sometimes an external event threatens tempo. For example, the pressures of social media to really have a much faster cycle time in our health messaging. Then there's the alternative threat, which is our own clearance requirements that threaten to derail integration by slowing one work stream more than another. When you have these sort of competing threats, having to deal with those and be attentive to them. And of course, once in a while, something happens and comes along that changes the entire tune. Pandemics, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, and we are asked to start singing a whole new song. There is real payoff if we can do this. I have experienced those moments that are called the sweet spot or flow when I play music. And fugues seem uniquely able to create those moments. While the payoff in music is somewhat intangible, the payoff for integrating our scientific efforts is not only that we make the science sing, but that we will see tangible improvements in health and well-being. I've been at CDC for nearly 22 years, and for all of that time, I have always felt like I was a member of one of the world's greatest ensembles. So while it hasn't always been merrily, 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 at CDC, life is but a team. So I promised you step 9 of the Vanity Fair guidance. Thank you very much. That was a joke.
My follow-up question for you has to do with the tempo notion. How do we speed up our tempo or adjust our tempo on an agency-wide level in response to a threat, as you identified, or maybe the presence of something new, like social media?
I think a really good example right now that we're confronting is the issue of electronic health records, and that the rest of the world, in particular our partner in this integration effort on the clinical side, has really had a quite advanced tempo on the development and use of electronic health records. And we seem to be relatively slow in our tempo on adapting and adopting into that technology and how to use that technology for population health. So I think this is one where rather than a conductorless orchestra where every group has to listen for itself and make sure it's staying together, where true leadership and ownership and sort of conducting that and making that happen needs to occur. I think that it's a really huge issue and one that actually covers the entire agency. I don't think there's any program at CDC that would be immune to the issues of the needs for adapting and adopting to electronic health records, and so I do think it needs agency-wide sort of ownership and leadership to push that forward.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Zaza.